Grand opening, grand closing.
Welcome, my friends, my family, my fellow gamers, your only friend in these YouTube streets, Puerto77, back with another video. PlayStation 5 Pro, as it's developing and all these rumors are getting deeper and deeper and deeper, the conversation of hardware is taking over and it's getting a bit ridiculous for I think, in my opinion, no reason. Let's look at some information provided by Tom Henderson. He went into more detail. Says right here, following this week's leaks on the PlayStation 5 Pro GPU specs and performance targets, Insider Gaming has learned more PlayStation 5 Pro specs. For comparison's sake, we will include the specification of the standard PlayStation 5. It says for system memory, the standard PlayStation 5 is 448 gigabits at 14 GTS, whatever that is. But the PlayStation 5 Pro is 576 gigabits, right? So a 28% increase over the standard console. That's like the sold out. It says outlined is that the PlayStation 5 Pro system memory is more efficient than the standard console, so the bandwidth gain may increase by over 28%. Now the CPU, and this is something that you see that many in the community is very disappointed, and it's pretty much the CPU is identical to the standard PlayStation 5. However, the Pro has a high CPU frequency mode, which takes the CPU to 3.85 gigahertz, a 10% increase over the standard console. In high CPU frequency mode, more power is allocated to the CPU and will downclock the GPU by around 1.5%, resulting in roughly 1% lower GPU performance. Now, this is something I think a lot of people were, I don't want to use the word afraid of, but maybe disappointment or whatever, but people were hoping that Sony would actually do a decent CPU upgrade. But what it sounds like is the CPU is capable to be clocked to higher frequency, and that's how they're going to produce more power, which is not the ideal thing that people want out of this. So moving on. Audio, the ACV in the PlayStation 5 Pro runs at a higher clock speed over the standard PlayStation 5, resulting in the ACM library having 35% more performance, which means more convolution reverbs can be processed, more FFT or IFTT can be processed. Better sound, whatever. The GPU has already been discussed, pretty much 45% rendering. So what else he says is, in addition, 30 WGPs running specialized BVHA. Wow, a lot of science fiction talk in this one. It also understood that as a means to make the PlayStation 5 Pro as competitive, not my free phrasing here, as possible, it will have a detachable disk drive, which will be identical to the latest iteration of the standard PlayStation 5 and a 1 terabyte storage space. Currently, the PS5 Pro is running on SKD 9.00 and SKD 10 is expected in fall 2024, which is the current target release date. So, what does all that mean? It doesn't mean a goddamn thing, right? Doesn't mean a goddamn thing. Did we not learn already that technical specs and paper specs doesn't mean anything until real world performance, right? There's a lot of conversations on Twitter. Everybody's trying to compare GPU and specs of PC, blah, blah. There's a back and forth. You got PC gamers talking shit. You got console gamers talking shit. The only thing that's happening now, all of y'all who are doing this are creating the environment where people are taking receipts and they want to get you in gotcha moments. That's it. That's all that's being done. You're just creating gotcha moments that when the PlayStation 5 Pro comes out and whatever it does, people are going to unleash those receipts to try to talk shit to you, right? And what's funny is there's no reason for that. It's not like Xbox is releasing their mid-gen refresh at the same time. Then you can have the comparison between those two. What is the PS5 Pro going to do versus what the Xbox Series X Pro is going to do? But that's not the scenario. Right now, PlayStation 5 Pro is an island all unto itself. There is no comparison with anything. Console gamers, and here's my opinion. Console gamers that every single time that try to use their console and compare it to PC every single time, you know, at any moment, any given day, all the time, every day, I think you're jealous of PC gamers, right? There's a time to, you know, maybe wonder a little bit and stuff like that. But when they come out and says, I'm going to have a console that's better than most PC gamers, whatever, why do you care? Like, why do you care if your console is better than the PC gamers? And vice versa. A lot of PC gamers do have better PC rigs than consoles, right? Some of you do. But you had to pay for that. And you pay for that for a reason. Well, no shit. If you pay more money for a gaming platform, it should be better. That's not like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's like, no shit. If you pay $1,500, $2,000, or even $1,200, $1,100 for a gaming rig, it better be better than a $500, $400 console, right? And if you look at the console and compare it to PC, the one that's compared to PC is really the all digital one, right? Because most likely your PC doesn't have a disk drive. Well, the all digital doesn't have a disk drive. The all digital is like around $400. So yes, your $1,200, $1,000, $1,500, whatever high price range PC, it has to be better than a $400 console. No shit. Congratulations, right? So this whole argument is dumb because if you want true power and performance all the time with, no compromises, whatever, you got to go PC, but you're going to pay for it. For the console gamers, right? They want something that's more reasonably priced, pretty much bang for your buck type console, which is all inclusive, all built, very little worry of putting it together, all under one manufacturer. That's what consoles do, and that's what consoles provide, right? But with the PlayStation 5 Pro, it's a little bit different. There's a little bit of change that people got to accept. And right here, BG, Broken Games, broke it down and said it best. It says right here, he says, and let me zoom in so that way you guys can see closer. But he says, whatever the true specs of the PlayStation 5 Pro are already set in stone. And I agree. The specs is already pretty much there. You can't do major shifts of specs from now to launch. Let's say, assuming it launches in November, that's not a lot of months. You might maybe add more RAM. That's about it. But CPU, GPU is pretty much in there. I would hope Sony would throw worry about affordability out the window and just make what you need to in order to yield a result. It makes no sense to have this Pro have insignificant differences for the sake of price when it's for the small percentage of enthusiasts anyway. The people are concerned of price. Will just buy the base PS5, so just go all out. And I absolutely agree with that sentiment. Right? Mid-gen refresh is in a tough spot just by right of creating it. In my opinion, I honestly didn't think there was going to be a mid-gen refresh, right? Now, I was half right because Xbox is not making a mid-gen refresh for a whole bunch of reasons. But I was half wrong because PlayStation apparently is. I know some people say, well, it's not officially announced. At this point, so many people are double down on the specs. It's done, right? I had a conversation with one of my panel members, E4 Extreme, great panel member. But I told him one of the key indicators of rumor being true is it contested? Because many people do have connections with PlayStation, with Microsoft, with Nintendo, blah, 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 right? If there was no Pro, you best believe somebody will make a video using their connections and call out the people saying that there's a Pro specs. People will call out Ty Henderson. People will call out Moore's Law is dead, because that's the perfect opportunity to go after those big, well-known name guys and use the resources that you trust and be like, they're lying. That ain't happening. These specs of the PlayStation 6, they're full of shit. You're not getting a new Pro console this holiday season. But that's not happening. Why? Because everybody's contacts through every levels is signaling a Pro's coming out. That's why no one's contesting it. You see no contestant. You might argue the specs, but the Pro itself in existence is not being contested by anyone, which leads to believe that there is a Pro. Now it's just an argument over specs. But again, this is a tough battle and a tough decision, right? Because what is a Pro supposed to do, right? It's only meant to do one thing. Be better than the PlayStation 5. That's it. Be better than the PlayStation 5. It is not going to be the mainstream console, right? So you're not going to get a lot of sales. The majority of the sales, because of competitive price, cheap price to get into gaming via the PlayStation 5, is going to be done by the basic model. So then what does the Pro do? The Pro needs to fulfill its own destiny as, I'm a beast as a PlayStation. I'm going to do everything that the PlayStation 5 can't, right? For that audience, right? The audience that's looking for that, price is not a concern. Anybody who's concerned about the PlayStation 5 Pro, you're not really interested in the Pro. Because if you're price conscious, and many of you are like, man, I hope the Pro's 500, then you don't really care about specs, all right? Because you're not going to get a significant jump over the PlayStation 5 with a $500 console. Keep in mind, this console will not be sold at a loss, so we don't have that advantage. This is not the same as launching a new next generation console like when the PlayStation 4 launched, when the PlayStation 5 launched, when the PlayStation 6 will launch, where those consoles will be sold at a loss because they're trying to get the most technology in, but they want the price low enough for mass adoption. Over time, with revisions, they're going to make it cheaper and cheaper as best they possible. And with the game sales and all that stuff, subscription, they'll recoup some of that money during the initial loss. But over time, they're going to make their money back, or it's going to get into profitability. But the Pro is not under that standard. Day one, when the Pro launches, they're making profit. That means when it launches at whatever date, let's just say November 15th, let's make up a date. That thing's making money that day because they're not going to lose out. So that price loss or sell at a loss that gives the advantage to consumers to have, powerful hardware at a cheaper cost, Pro's not going to do that. It's not going to do that at all. So with that, PlayStation 5 Pro, not going to be sold at a loss. And it needs to do the job to be better than the PlayStation 5. No question. It's going to be expensive. Asking the Pro to be cheap, to be $500 or even $550 at most, you're gimping it. And you're ruining its true value. And the majority of people that want that $500 or $550, you're not really interested in its tech specs. For me, if it costs $650 or $600 or up, it's because they actually put effort into actual performance. And that's what I expect. If I look at the PS5 Pro, it better do something. It better be significant. It better be the PlayStation 5. I mean, beat it out unquestioned. Not even a question. For me, the standard majority of the games need to be 60 frames, quality mode. Of course, they do checkerboard, 4K AI. Apparently, this PSSR technology, similar to DLSS and FS3. That's fine. All right? That's fine. But I shouldn't have to play 1080p 60 no more. Everything should be some form of 4K, fake 4K, checkerboard 4K, 60 standard quality mode. If we're talking performance mode, now you're talking, okay, fine, 1440p 120. Doesn't have to be 4K 120. 1440p 120. Got it. You know what I'm saying? That to me is worth its value. But if you're still at 4K, 30 frames as quality mode, man, bro, what's the point? What's really the point? For a little bit better shadow effects and stuff like that, it should be a significant leap to where the PS5 Pro is a significant leap over its PlayStation 5 counterpart. And the people should not be worrying about the price. It's not going to sell a lot, okay? It's not going to call in the next generation or new generation or people saying, well, the PS5 is going to hold it back. No, it's not going to hold it back because the purpose of the Pro is just simply be a better PS5. It's not meant to standardize a new generation or set a new bar. The PS5 is the generational console. That's the standard. And all games going forward. Of course, you got Xbox Series S and all that other stuff. But pretty much those consoles that launched in 2020, that's the standard for the gen. Mid-gen refresh PlayStation 5 Pro is not going to elevate the new standard. No, that's the minimal standard. What we launched and what we got November 2020, minimum standard. That's it. Nothing's changing. The standard changes with the next generation of platforms when the PlayStation 6 launch and whatever other device launches alongside of it in that time frame. That's the new standard. The Pro is just supposed to be a better PlayStation 5. And if you want a better PlayStation 5, you got to pay for it. It's simple. You want better, you got to pay for it. Gaming's the only industry where we have the consumer think you can get better and not actually pay for it. It's absolutely wild, right? Now, some people are still going to argue this point. Let me bring up something else, right? The PlayStation console, the Pro, on its own won't do much for Sony unless they think this console can draw in new consumers. Now, when you think about it, what new consumers, new people to jump onto the PlayStation ecosystem, play on PlayStation consoles, will this console attract? And the only consumer that this console will attract that the PS5, for whatever reason, is not attracting is the high-tech, high-performance consumer. That's it. Because any other consumer, if the consumer is, oh, I love PlayStation games, they're going to get the PlayStation 5. The PlayStation 5 Pro is not going to change that consumer that likes PlayStation games. Anyone who's not willing to buy a PlayStation 5, but now are saying, you know what? Now I'm going to get a PlayStation 5 because they have the Pro. It's because of tech, not because of games, because the games are not going to change, fundamentally change, right? The games are always going to be there. And if you're all about the games, PlayStation 5 satisfy that. But if you want a certain level of performance, certain level of graphics, all that stuff, lock frame rates and all that stuff, you're a tech guy. And that's who we attracted this console, which means you can't half-step the console if you're trying to attract that audience, right? The next audience, right? And this is where I think a huge part of that audience is actually going to come from, even though the PlayStation 5 Pro I don't think is going to sell a lot, but a huge portion of what it does sell is primarily going to come from this audience, and this audience is those who already have the PlayStation 5. You already paid $500, $400 for your console. You already have it. So why would you buy a new PlayStation 5 if you already own a PlayStation 5? Reason? Tech. You want tech. You're not buying a new PlayStation 5 to save money. You're buying it because you want tech. You want to upgrade. You want something that's better than what you already have. So that's really the main selling point. Put the tech in, right? People say, oh, this thing's dead on arrival if it's $600. It's already dead on arrival by its own existence because, again, it's only catering to one type of consumer, a technical-minded consumer that cares about performance. A consumer that just cares about games, PlayStation 5s are already out. And most likely that's what they're getting or that's what they're going to get. They're not going to pay $600 no matter what that console does or even $500. The console could come out of $500. They're still going to go after the $400 all digital or the $450 slim. They're not going to pay an extra $50, an extra $100 just for slightly better specs. Not interested. The cheaper models is what they're going for because what they care about is just simply playing the games, playing the third party, playing what they're playing, right? Especially if they drop the price, by the time the Pro comes out, even worse. If somehow Sony manages to sell the PS5 Slim with the disc, let's say at $400 and the all digital for $350, everybody's going to eat that one up. Almost everybody is going to jump on the train for a $350, $400 PlayStation. The Pro won't even have a prayer of being bought unless you're technical minded, performance minded. And to get those people that are technical minded, performance minded, you got to provide solid performance. You got to provide performance that says, I got it. Interesting, right? Now, all this is jumping onto nonsense. Let me bring up one more thing. So Brad Sams, big Xbox influencer, big Xbox enthusiast. Let's listen to this.
It looks like Sony is about to dethrone the Xbox. When this current generation of consoles launched, one of the big talking points was, well, the compute power of each device, right? Compute power is a lot of things, and for previous generation consoles, it was kind of like the only thing that mattered because we didn't have things like ray tracing and dynamic contrast and everything else going on and all the high resolutions. It was basically how much frames per second, how much could you cram in to a single console? And granted, things were a lot simpler back then. We're really talking about like 2D platformers for the most part, but today things are obviously in a 3-dimension, and we're in like the third generation of consoles where 3D is really a thing, maybe even the fourth. And so coming out this week, it sounds like PlayStation is about to try to dethrone the Xbox with the PS5 Pro. And there's a lot of details we need to talk about here and how it kind of is going to impact Xbox at the end of the day. So the information starts to come from Moore's Law is dead, which people have pointed out. Interesting stuff because this is going to shift the market. We know the Xbox has played around a little bit here with we potentially a console in the second half of the year. We'll get to that in a second. But the reality becomes is what's going to happen in the console space? Well, depending on how you look at this, there's a lot of different ways that this can go. First off, there's still games that are coming.
And yes, I recognize I still have myself muted. I'm sorry about that. What I said before was just simply I'm skipping ahead because he's just going to go over the specs, and we heard that to death, right? But let's hear this view about dethroning Xbox.
coming out that are PS4 compatible. So any title that is realistically targeting a PS4, PS5, and I'm assuming PS5 Pro is obviously not going to be able to take full advantage of the new console because, hey, they've got to make conditional assessment to how are we going to support legacy consoles along with this new box. Also, at the end of the day, you're probably more likely just to see enhanced performance because again, I don't see a title coming out that's PS5 Pro exclusive. That would be really uncharacteristic of what we.
These guys just say silly shit. No shit, you're not gonna see PS5 Pro exclusives. That doesn't need to be said. Like, all right, let's start from the beginning. One, there's nothing to dethrone because the power narrative of Xbox being the most powerful console in the world did not happen. Microsoft doesn't even say that. They even stopped saying that a long time ago. So the term most powerful console in the world was already diminished. Because the PS5 and Xbox on a game-by-game basis, one had better over, there was no way to clearly tell who was actually better. The PlayStation 5 console was built that well. So the term most powerful console in the world doesn't exist right now because it's hard to say. Because you can show examples of PlayStation thrashing Xbox and vice versa. So it just wasn't even worth the argument. Microsoft didn't even continue to do that. So there was no 320 Xbox. That shit was already finito. But people saying, well, we're not going to see the true power of the... It's a mid-gen refresh. It is its job, any mid-gen refresh, right, with more powerful hardware, but it's a mid-gen refresh. Its job is just simply to be a better version of what originally came out. In this case, PS5 Pro is just there to be better than a PS5. It is not meant to start a new generation or to provide new hardware to set a new benchmark, meaning create exclusives utilizing this capability so we can move forward with a new standard. It's not raising the new minimum standard. PlayStation 5 is the standard, along with, or I'll put it this way, the consoles that launched in November 2020, that's the standard. Now, of course, among them is the Xbox Series S. You know, people said, damn, this is going to be a problem. But overall, what we got to kick off this generation, that's the standard. Right? And then you combine it with PC, whatever's the lowest GPU developers are willing to go to, that's part of the minimum standard. Then everything else is just going up. Okay? PlayStation 5 Pro is no different than the new GPU coming out. It's just better hardware over what's there previously. It's not defining the new minimum standard. So it's pretty ridiculous that people are trying to make it as a con. It's not a con, because it wasn't an expectation that was set to begin with.
We have seen from the console generations. So more likely you're going to see something like a PS5 and a PS5 Pro version where the Pro version enables a true 4K 60 frames per second all the time. I think one of the big downers of this generation, Xbox and PlayStation,
God damn it, the mute mic. I'm sorry. That's exactly what you're going to get. It's not most likely a scenario of PS5 and the PS5 Pro game. That most likely will happen. No, that's exactly what's going to happen. Exactly. That's literally the point. You're going to get a Pro, and that PS5 game that was built for PS5 is going to run better than the Pro. What we should really be talking about is how much better. Because that's the true value of the Pro. The Pro's only value is the further it improves over the game. The bigger the gap in performance over the PS5, the better performance, the better look, the better its value is. The problem is, you got people that still want it for $400 or $500. No, you want a $400 console, you get your ass the PS5. Stop gimping the Pro. A $500 Pro, $450 Pro is gimped. It's useless. What did you do? 2 extra pixels? It's pointless. The better the PS5 Pro can perform, outperform the PS5, the better its existence. And yes, you have to pay for it. Why are gamers treating gaming different than any other? You have to pay for better. You need the chavos. You need the chanchitos, the change, the dinero, the pesos, buddy. All right? You want to fly first class? Pay first class. You want to play business class? Pay business class. You want to fly in a plane with coach service? Then you get coach. It is what it is. You know, you want to have court seats and you don't want to be up in the bleachers? Pay. Ringside in a boxing event? Pay. Penthouse in a hotel? Pay. State cabins on a cruise? Pay. You want a V12 engine instead of the V6? Pay. Pay. Hello. What are we doing here, right? It's absolutely nonsense. The cheap mentality that's groomed in gaming, in entertainment, right? You want a low-costing console? You got a PlayStation 5. That is the low-costing console that you're going to get whatever. The PlayStation 5 Pro should be built on this performance, right? And if Sony, I think, again, that's the biggest mistake with the PS4 Pro. They released a PS4 Pro for $400, and I'm sorry. Most people were not impressed. That was probably the most least impressive console I ever seen. It was like, man, what the hell are we talking about here? A lot of people pretend, but most people are pretending it was only because it was $400. It didn't do shit. I was like, what? Yeah. I seen the images. I was like, nah, it's not even worth it. It was not. And hopefully Sony learned their lessons. Like, you know what? We're gonna make a technically impressive. Now, of course, you're not gonna sell $2,000 console, right? Because then people are gonna be like, I'll just go PC, right? There's a fine balance. But a $500 Pro, that ain't it. I could tell you right off the bat, selling a PS5 Pro for profit at $500, that shit is gimped. Okay? I expect minimum 600. I'll be honest. For me, officially, minimum 600 without the disc. I think that's the lowest it can go where you can possibly actually do something with it. That maybe you can see some significance advantage over the PlayStation 5. It's, you know, a $600 all digital, but obviously it has a slot. You'll pay $50 for a separate disc and you set it yourself. You know, to me, that's to me is the reasonable minimum price point of a PlayStation 5 Pro that can actually do something that we could start to see, like, okay, we could see some good stuff. It starts there. If the console's like 500, even if it's all digital, man. But anyway, back to this. Let's see what else he says.
PlayStation is that when it comes to 4K 60, like we all thought we were getting, it's really 4K 60-ish, because if you want 4K 60, then you have to turn down some graphic fidelity. If you don't mind that, you want higher frame rates, then you can go down to the 1080p, and then you're getting locked performance. So 4K, it's more like 4K 30, 1080p 60 is kind of what like the baseline has been, and people will rightfully point out, Brad, there are 4K games that run at 60 frames per second. That is absolutely true, but it doesn't really reduce the fact that in a lot of titles, you have to choose between 4K and 60 frames per second are sort of where you're at. I may have miffed that up a little bit, but realistically, like, we know what I mean. So I think with this console, that is what we're absolutely going to see, is guaranteed 4K 60 frames per second, no matter what, which is what we want. Now, granted, that is an attractive thing. I have no issues. Like, if that's literally all that they say is like, look, we promise 4K 60 frames per second and higher ray tracing for your titles that you already love, they'll look even better. Like, that is attractive to me, and I don't even own a PlayStation at the end of the day.
You see what I'm talking about? That's what I said earlier. If people who are tech-minded, performance-minded, that's who this console, the PlayStation 5 Pro, is for. So do it. Don't worry about the price. The tech-minded people who this console is really targeted for, they're going to go buy it. Everyone who's looking for a $500 console, they're not tech-minded. They're not. It's just, they're just hoping they could get some type of tech, even if it's gimped, but even like 1% better at the same price, they'll take it. Don't go after that. Most of the people that says, if it's over 500, I'm not getting it. Good. Don't get it. You're not getting it anyway, right? Go for the performance. Go for it. It's got to cost. It's going to cost. Better products tend to be more expensive. That's just how it is, right? But the option for a cheaper costing system is the PlayStation 5. So it's not like, you know, there isn't a low costing, cheaper option available. This is for the tech specs. This is for the tech minded. This is for the power hungry. Just make it for the power hungry. That's just my view. Anyway, as far as Xbox being three-tone, come on, man. Let's just stop. People still trying to fight console wars. It's over. Console wars over. Let's just cut that shit out. Get over it. It's going to take a while, I guess. Is the people just going to have to go through its withdrawals? Fine. Go through your withdrawals. Maybe, hopefully, by 2025, it'll be all over. People will just recognize. I think what's really going to take is when Halo comes out. Halo or Forza. When one of those two titles comes out, right? The tentpole exclusives, the main franchise. Once you see that on PlayStation, I think that's when really people be like, okay, console wars is really over, and they could move on. But we could stop seeing stuff like this. But anyway, you let me know what you think. Sorry about the mute stuff. Really sorry about that. But anyway, I love you guys. Thank you so much for rocking out with the channel. See you guys Tuesday, 60 frames no lag. 8:30 p.m. Eastern time every Tuesday. Hit up the comment section. Are you a tech enthusiast or are you not? Right? And if you are a real true tech enthusiast, meaning you want the power and performance, what is your max price point before you say, I'll accept this tech level, but now anything above this is PC realm. Now you just went beyond console and now you're dipping into the PC realm. Let me know what your price point is as a tech enthusiast that wants the best performance in a console. Please put that in the comment section. Anyway, your only friend is YouTube Streets Puerto77, and I am out of here. Peace.
Grand opening, grand closing.